My younger brother got my girlfriend pregnant, and all my mom said was, "He's weaker than you. He needs help, not blame." No apology, no empathy, not even a moment of hesitation. They didn't ask how I felt. They only asked what I was going to do to keep the family from falling apart. But what about me? Who's going to keep me from falling apart? Do you think family deserves forgiveness, even when they do the unforgivable? Stick around for this story, where home isn't something you return to, but something you learn to walk away from. Josh was the kind of guy everyone could trust. At 28, he worked as an architect at a design firm in the suburbs of Boston. He didn't smoke, never drank too much, and wasn't one to talk just to fill silence. He liked working on blueprints, listening to instrumental music, and cleaning the house on Sunday mornings. To his friends, Josh had it all: a steady career, a clean-cut look, and a calm, reliable personality. But anyone who knew him long enough could see it. Josh's life was a constant balancing act between responsibility and burnout. He lived with Emily, his girlfriend of 3 years, in a 2-bedroom apartment in Arlington. They met at a book fair, back when Emily was interning for a lifestyle magazine. Their love didn't start with fireworks. It started with post-work dinners and quiet Friday nights watching documentaries. Neither of them liked crowds, rushed decisions, or unrealistic dreams. When Emily lost her job due to company layoffs, Josh was the first to say, "Move in with me. Save your money. We'll figure it out together." They had planned to get engaged the following summer. Josh had already picked out a small, classic diamond ring. Nothing flashy, just meaningful. He thought, for once, everything in his life was finally falling into place. But there was one part of Josh's life no one ever really saw: his family. Josh's mom was a widow. She wasn't loud or cruel, but somehow she always made Josh feel guilty, even when he hadn't done anything wrong. After his dad died in a car accident when Josh was just 15, she became closed off and unpredictable. Josh learned to read her moods by the clatter of dishes or the way she folded napkins on the table. "You have to take care of your brother. I only have you two now." That one sentence became the foundation of every choice Josh made after that. Tyler, Josh's younger brother, was 3 years younger and had a history of drug abuse. He dropped out of college and, after a few failed rehab attempts, moved back in with their mom. He had no stable job and occasionally took money from Josh to start fresh. Josh never asked where the money went. He just knew that every time his mom said, "He's trying, don't make it harder for him," he'd pull out his wallet. Josh covered most of the family's expenses: the utility bills for his mom's house, Tyler's car insurance, even college tuition for classes Tyler signed up for, and then dropped halfway through. Each month, more than a third of Josh's paycheck vanished. No one said thank you. No one asked how much he had left. Emily knew about it. She didn't interfere, but she didn't support it either. A few times, she said, "You can't save anyone if you're drowning too." Josh would just smile. To him, fulfilling his duty wasn't up for debate. Family takes care of family. That was it. The atmosphere in Josh's family felt like a pressure cooker. No one yelled, but everyone was exhausted. Every family dinner turned into a monologue from his mom: complaints about the neighbors, the gas prices, and how no one understood what Tyler was going through. Josh would sit quietly, nodding, waiting for the dishes to be done, then quietly leave with Emily. The more responsibilities Josh took on, the less time he had to think about himself. He worked, came home, sent money, answered calls, sat through family meetings. He thought he was managing it all. He believed that if he just pushed a little harder, everything would fall into place. Emily would find a new job. Tyler would get back on his feet. His mom would finally worry less. And maybe, just maybe, he'd get to rest. But there was one thing Josh didn't know: peace, when built on one-sided sacrifice, never lasts. And sometimes you don't realize you're burned out until you've already lost everything. Josh didn't know exactly when things started to shift, but there was one night, after coming home late from work, when he found Emily sitting silently out on the balcony. She was so still, he had to speak first. "You okay?" She turned, forced a smile, and said she was just thinking about random stuff. Not long after, she asked to move in with him full-time. She said it was to save on rent after losing her job. Their 1-bedroom apartment became their shared space, and Josh agreed without hesitation. At the time, it felt natural. After 3 years together, living under one roof wasn't a surprise. He wanted to ease her burden. He didn't press her about job hunting. He didn't ask her to chip in on rent. Emily still did the groceries, cooked, cleaned, but somehow, the closer they lived, the farther apart they felt. Josh started to notice Emily growing quieter. She used to share the little things, funny videos, random stories she'd read online. Now, she mostly nodded when he asked something, or gave a faint smile before turning away. The nights of lying in bed reading together were gone. When Josh reached out to hold her, she'd often say, "I'm just a little tired," and roll over. He figured maybe she was still adjusting to losing her job, to relying on someone else. Josh wasn't the kind to push or demand, so he stepped back, gave her space. But inside, a vague unease began to grow. And then, Tyler started showing up at Josh's apartment more often. At first, it was just a few evening visits, Tyler dropping by to pick up things their mom had sent over. But then, he started showing up in the afternoons, while Josh was still at work. One day, Josh came home early and found Tyler on the couch, eating instant noodles with his feet up on the coffee table. Emily was wiping down the kitchen counter. They both looked up at the same time, almost startled to see him. Tyler laughed loudly. "You're home early." Emily just gave a soft smile and turned away. Josh didn't think much of it. After all, it was his brother. And Emily had once said, Tyler needs more understanding, not more judgment. But over time, Tyler's accidental visits started happening too often, and too conveniently. One evening, Josh texted Emily to come home for dinner. She replied, "I'm out with a friend." That night, Josh ran into Tyler in the parking lot. Tyler was wearing Emily's hoodie. One night, around 2 in the morning, Josh woke up to the sound of a text notification. The light from Emily's phone was casting a glow on the ceiling. She was lying on her side, screen turned toward her body, fingers still typing. Josh didn't say anything. He just rolled over and pretended to be asleep. A moment later, Emily quietly slipped out of bed, phone in hand. The bathroom door closed behind her. A strip of light spilled out from under the door. Josh could hear the soft ping of more messages coming from inside. The next morning, she acted like everything was normal, even asked if he wanted her to pack him lunch. Josh looked at her a little longer than usual. He almost asked, but he didn't. There was nothing concrete. No proof, no words, no clear action, just a feeling. But that feeling sat on him like a boulder the entire day. He started paying closer attention. Emily would quickly grab her phone whenever a message came in. She changed her passcode, something neither of them had ever bothered with before. Once, Josh walked into the kitchen and caught her texting. She immediately turned off the screen, like a reflex. Tyler kept randomly dropping by the apartment when Josh wasn't home. Emily brushed it off as just coincidence. Josh told himself he was probably overthinking it. Work had been stressful lately, deadlines were slipping, and living together always came with adjustments. He didn't want to be paranoid. Emily used to say she loved how steady and calm he was. He didn't want to ruin that, not over a few signs that might mean nothing. But what exhausted Josh the most wasn't the suspicion toward Emily. It was the fact that he had started doubting himself. Was it because he'd been too focused on work and forgot to make time for her? Was he too cold, too distant, and that made her feel alone? Was the maturity and logic he'd always been proud of actually costing him the things that mattered most? Josh didn't say anything to anyone. He didn't ask Emily. He didn't confront Tyler. He didn't tell his mom. He just kept it all inside, the way he always had. But deep down, the cracks had already begun to form. Small, silent, and impossible to ignore. The apartment had started to feel colder in those early winter days. Josh tried to stay calm, but the distance between him and Emily was becoming undeniable. Short answers, avoided eye contact, and Tyler's suffocating presence in their home made it harder and harder for Josh to sleep. Something was wrong. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was the truth, slowly revealing itself, piece by piece. One evening, Josh came home earlier than planned. His meeting at work wrapped up by 4, and he didn't text ahead. He thought it'd be nice to surprise Emily and cook dinner together. On the way back, he picked up flowers, something he hadn't done in a long time. But when he opened the door, the apartment was unusually quiet. No music, no smell of food, no response when he called her name. Josh set the bouquet on the table and walked toward the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. From inside, there were heavy breaths and unmistakable sounds, the kind that didn't need words to slap you in the face. Josh froze for a few seconds. His hand trembled as he pushed the door open. Tyler was on the bed, shirtless, kneeling beside Emily. Both of them turned when they heard the door. Neither said a word. Tyler's eyes widened, not with shame, but like he was annoyed at being interrupted. Emily was frozen, clutching the blanket to her chest like a flimsy shield. Josh stood there, unmoving. His eyes didn't blink. His heart pounded so hard it choked him. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. Silence. "Get out of my house," Josh said, not loud but with a voice sharp as a cold blade. Tyler stood and pulled on his pants in silence. Emily reached for her shirt, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Josh stepped back like just one more breath in that room would shatter him. "Josh," Emily stammered. "I'm sorry, I don't know why. This just—" He looked at her, not with anger, but with emptiness. "How long?" His voice was flat, barely a beat in it. Emily began to cry. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks, but Josh felt nothing. She sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around her stomach, unable to meet his eyes. "I said, how long?" Josh repeated, slowly. "A few weeks," she whispered. "And you were still sleeping with me," Josh said, almost like he was reminding himself. "While you were sleeping with my brother?" Emily's sobs grew louder, a choking sound from deep in her chest. "Josh, I didn't know it would end up like this. I was weak. I felt like I was drifting. And Tyler, he was just there." Josh went still. The answer didn't even matter anymore, but he asked anyway. "Was that the only time?" Emily didn't reply. She stared at the floor, silent, like every word would bleed. "Is there anything else I don't know?" Slow, but sharp. Emily looked up, eyes swimming with tears. "Josh, I'm pregnant." Time froze. No one spoke for 5 full seconds. Josh thought he'd misheard. "You're sure?" She nodded. "How far along?" 4 weeks. Josh gripped the arm of the chair, trying to keep steady. "Whose is it?" Emily choked on the words. "I don't know." The air in the room thickened like smoke. Josh couldn't breathe. In a matter of moments, he had gone from brother, from partner, to a third wheel, watching the ruins of his own life burn down. Tyler stepped out of the bathroom, hair still damp, avoiding Josh's eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said flatly. "She came to me when you weren't home. She started it. I thought she was just upset because you'd been ignoring her." Josh looked at his brother like he was seeing a stranger. "What are you trying to say? That you slept with my girlfriend out of pity?" Tyler shrugged. "We were both lonely. It just happened. We didn't want you to find out." Josh didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just let out a breath, long and tired. "Get out. Both of you, right now." Emily stayed seated, not moving. "Josh, I have nowhere to go. I lost my job. I don't have a place. I don't have anyone. I messed up, I know. But you're all I have left." Josh turned away. That sentence hit him like the final blow, not out of pity, but because it reminded him of something painful. She didn't stay because she loved him. She stayed because he was the last thing she could hold on to, until now. "It's because you knew I wouldn't leave you. That betraying me was so easy," Josh said, still not turning around. He walked out of the room, opened the front door, and stood there. "Get out, now." Tyler passed him first, silent. Emily followed slowly, her eyes still red and puffy. As she approached, Josh took a small step back, just enough to avoid her gaze. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to hold on to. The door closed behind them. Josh stood still in the silence, not moving. Everything felt like it was floating, like a cruel dream with no way out. He looked down at his hands. They were still trembling slightly, not from anger, but from being completely unmoored. His girlfriend, his brother, his home, his future. All of it had collapsed in one single afternoon. And in that moment, Josh knew. He could never go back to being who he was before. He sat on the living room floor for an hour after Emily and Tyler left. The apartment was so quiet, it felt like someone had died in it. What he felt now wasn't rage. It was complete emptiness. His eyes were dry, but his body was cold, like he just walked out of a dream in the middle of a snowstorm. The next morning, Josh drove to his mother's house. He didn't really know what he was hoping for. A hug, a fair word, or maybe just a place to sit down and breathe. He had never needed his mother more than he did now. And maybe, somewhere deep down, he still believed that no matter what happened, she'd be on his side. The familiar suburban house looked the same. Potted plants by the porch, the old wind chime clinking softly in the breeze. His mother opened the door, wearing her usual faded gray sweater, hair tied neatly back. She looked at him for a moment, then said, "Tyler told me everything." Josh stepped in, took off his shoes, and sat down on the old sofa. The room still carried the warmth of childhood memories. Christmas movies, roasted chicken dinners, but now it all felt like a faded coat of paint over a bottomless crack. "I need to talk," Josh said, voice low and rough. "I kicked Emily and Tyler out of my house." His mother poured tea and set it down in front of him, but didn't sit. "Tyler said he already apologized to you," she began. He panicked, Josh. Everything happened because he was weak. Josh stared at her, disbelief in his eyes. "Weak? You know he slept with my girlfriend. You know Emily's pregnant, and you're calling that weakness?" She sat down across from him, her gaze fixed on his. "He didn't mean to hurt you. Emily's an adult too. You can't put it all on Tyler." Josh's chest burned, his fists clenched on his knees. "You think I'm blaming him unfairly?" he asked. "You think this was some kind of accident? That Emily just tripped into his bed and they both forgot they were betraying me?" "You're making this heavier than it needs to be," his mother replied, voice still calm. "This is family. No matter what happens, you have to think about blood. Tyler is your brother. And what am I?" Josh's voice cracked. "I'm the oldest son who works, sends money, takes care of this whole damn family. I'm the one who forgives, who holds it all together, who carries everything. And now I'm sitting here, and you're telling me to think about him?" "Tyler's always been hard to manage," his mother replied, her voice weary. "I'm tired, Josh. I just want you to understand. You've always been the logical one, the strong one. But sometimes, being too strong can come off as cold," she said, tilting her head slightly. "You try to control everything so tightly. Maybe it made people feel suffocated. Maybe Emily felt that too." Josh let out a laugh, but it was jagged, painful, broken. "So now it's my fault. I wasn't soft enough. I wasn't forgiving enough. I wasn't easy enough to betray. Has it ever occurred to you why I've had to be so strong in the first place?" His voice cracked. For the first time, Josh cried in front of his mother. Not the quiet tears of a composed adult, but the raw, broken sobs of a child whose trust had just been shattered. "You've always defended him," he said through gritted teeth. "Ever since we were kids, got good grades, I stayed out of trouble. I never talked back, and still, you never took my side." His mother didn't answer right away. She just looked at him, eyes flickering with something, maybe regret, but her lips stayed pressed tight. "I didn't come here to ask you for anything," Josh said, wiping his tears with his sleeve. I thought you'd at least say, you didn't deserve this." "But you didn't." "I'm not choosing sides," she said softly. "I just don't want to lose another child. Our family's already fractured enough." Josh stood up. He understood now. It wasn't that she didn't feel pain. It's that Tyler always seemed more fragile to her, the one closest to completely breaking. And Josh? She had always assumed he'd pick himself back up, just like he always did. "I just wanted to be allowed to hurt, like a person," Josh said quietly, "not like a machine built to carry everyone." He walked to the door. His hand touched the handle, cold to the touch. Before he opened it, he turned back, one last time. "You think I'm logical, strong, in control. But the truth is, I've just been silent, and today, I'm not staying silent anymore." The door clicked shut behind Josh with a soft snap. Outside, the rain had started. He didn't bring an umbrella, didn't bring anything at all except the bare, brutal truth. His girlfriend had betrayed him. His brother had betrayed him. And his mother hadn't chosen him. In that moment, Josh had no one, no home, no anchor, just himself, standing alone on a rain-soaked street trying to take one deep breath, just to keep from falling apart right there on the sidewalk. He couldn't remember how long he'd been driving after leaving his mother's house. The rain kept coming, soaking through his jacket, slapping against the windshield, blurring everything like his thoughts. He didn't go back to the old apartment. He didn't go anywhere familiar. He just kept driving, turning down empty streets, as if, with enough miles behind him, he might finally outrun the crushing weight in his chest. Close to midnight, Josh pulled up in front of a small apartment building on the south side of the city. He hadn't called ahead. Wasn't even sure if the person inside would still be awake. But the light was on in the second-floor window. He stepped out of the car, soaked through, and rang the bell. Amanda opened the door, still half asleep, messy hair and oversized t-shirt, but when she saw Josh, she didn't ask a single question. She simply stepped aside, leaving the door open for him to come in. Josh said nothing. She didn't need him to. Amanda had been an old friend from college, someone he dated briefly, then mutually decided to stay close with. The rare kind of friendship that never got complicated, never demanded too much, and never really went away. She lived alone, freelanced as a designer, didn't socialize much, but she always showed up exactly when it mattered. Just like now. Josh slept on Amanda's couch for 3 nights straight without offering a single explanation. He just lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Amanda brought him water, cooked a few simple meals, left little notes on the fridge. There's cake inside, turn on the TV if your brain feels too loud. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer advice. She didn't try to comfort him. And somehow, it was that silence, that space without expectation, that let Josh breathe a little easier. His mind felt like a shredded map. Nothing fit, nothing led anywhere. Each morning, he had to remind himself what day it was, whether he needed to go into the office if someone was waiting for a callback. But his head was empty. He showed up to work late, missed meetings, forgot his schedule. And over again, his thoughts circled back to that moment. Tyler stepping out of the bathroom, hair still wet, eyes hollow. After a week of drifting through the fog, Josh's boss called him into the office. "Josh, I understand you're going through something personal," he said, calm, direct. "But the project's behind schedule because we're missing your designs. We need someone who's here, fully, in time and in mind. Maybe you should take some time off." Josh didn't argue. He simply nodded and quietly packed up his desk. When he walked out of the office, no one stopped him. No one asked if he was okay. No one said goodbye. He walked out like a shadow, the man they used to call a cornerstone. That night, Emily called. Josh didn't answer. She left a long voicemail, voice shaking. "I know I messed up. I just want to talk this through. I need to hear something from you, please." A second message came after midnight. "I can't sleep. I don't know what to do. I need you." Josh stared at the screen for a long time before finally powering it off. He wanted to erase that voice, to peel away every memory stuck to the name Emily. But he couldn't. She was still in his mind, not out of love, but because the wound hadn't healed yet. Not even close. The next morning, Amanda came home with 2 coffees. She set one down in front of him, then took her seat across the table, opened her laptop and started working. Like Josh was just another piece of furniture in the apartment. Out of nowhere, Josh spoke. "Why haven't you asked me anything?" Amanda tapped a few keys, then looked up. "I figured you'd talk when you're ready, and if not, I'd still let you stay." He nodded, eyes stinging. Maybe, in the chaos and despair, the only thing that made Josh feel like he wasn't completely abandoned was that quiet, gentle silence. 3 weeks passed. Josh still hadn't figured his life out. No job, no home, no plan. But at least each morning he woke up to the smell of coffee. Sunlight filtering through the curtains, the rhythmic click of Amanda's keyboard in the next room, and no one telling him he had to be okay right away. Josh never said thank you. But one day, when Amanda was out, he folded the blanket, cleaned the floors, and made a simple dinner. When she got back and saw the warm food on the table, she just smiled. "I'm not trying to turn you into my house chef, you know." Josh gave a small laugh, the first in a long time. Not because he was happy, but because, for the first time in forever, he could finally breathe. In a life that had just lost everything, and now had to start again. A week after Josh cooked his first dinner in Amanda's apartment, life settled into something still and quiet. Like a flat lake untouched by wind. No chaos. No one brought up the past. Josh didn't talk much. Amanda didn't ask for more. They moved through the days like 2 people on the same train, sharing the ride, but never asking where the other was headed. That morning, Amanda placed an envelope on the kitchen counter while Josh was pouring coffee. "I printed this out," she said. "You should look at it." Josh opened the envelope. It was a bank statement, his own, covering nearly 6 months. Most of it showed the usual: rent, groceries, gas. But scattered between those familiar charges were transactions that didn't make sense. Cash withdrawals from ATMs on the west side of town, payments at a sporting goods store, one Josh had never been to. This isn't mine," Josh said, voice low, eyes frozen on a $1,200 charge. Amanda pointed to the name on the authorized user line. "Tyler. When did you give him a secondary card?" Josh went quiet. He remembered, 3 years ago, when Tyler wanted to enroll in some community college business classes. Josh had given him a secondary card to make paying tuition easier. Later, Tyler said he lost it. Josh canceled the card, or at least thought he had. And after that, he never really checked where his money was going. His grip tightened on the statement. "I didn't notice. I didn't think Tyler would." "You didn't think he'd sleep with your girlfriend either," Amanda cut in. Soft voice, sharp truth. "But he did." Josh stared down at the papers. Each number felt like a fresh cut. Not because of the money, but because of what it revealed. Tyler had been using him. For a long time, not once, not twice, but over and over. And he, the big brother who held everything together, had become an ATM with no voice and no limits. He remembered it all now. The late-night calls. Out of gas. Need to pay a fine. New girlfriend wants something nice. Josh never questioned it. He just sent the money and forgot, thinking he was helping Tyler get back on his feet. But the truth was harsher. He wasn't helping. He was enabling, feeding a pattern, fueling someone who had learned to survive off the generosity of others. His stomach twisted, not with rage, but with a quiet, sinking shame. Being betrayed by a girlfriend was devastating, but realizing he'd been exploited for years by his own blood, that hit deeper than any insult ever could. Amanda stayed seated, saying nothing more. She didn't need to. She knew Josh was finally facing what he'd tried to ignore for far too long. He didn't have a family, at least not the kind he used to believe in. That afternoon, Josh returned to the old apartment to pack up the last of his things. Everything was exactly as he had left it. A dirty glass in the sink, a half-folded blanket, a book left open, spine cracked in the middle. He gathered it all into 2 suitcases, not leaving a single trace behind. On the kitchen counter, his old phone was still there, powered off. He turned it on. Messages flooded in. Most were from Emily, a few from his mother. Only one from Tyler. "Do you really hate me that much?" Josh didn't reply. He deleted every message, pulled out the SIM card, lightly tapped it against the edge of the sink, and dropped it into the trash. It felt like pulling out a needle that had been buried in his skin for years. No more threads, no more hoping, no more ties. That evening, he said to Amanda, "I'm leaving." She didn't ask where. She just said, "Leave an address when you're ready." Josh nodded. The next morning, he booked a flight to Oregon, a place he'd never been, where he knew no one. He wanted to start in a place where no one knew his name, where no one called him the steady older brother, where no one expected him to fix anything, where no one said the names Tyler or Emily. He rented a small apartment in a forest-side town. New phone, new number, no Facebook, no Instagram, no thread left tying him to his old life. He lived off savings for now, sent out resumes to small design firms, quietly, without urgency, without expectation. At first, the days felt disorienting. He'd wake up not knowing what to do. No messages, no calls, no demands. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was agonizing, like an itch you couldn't quite reach. But slowly, day by day, Josh began to hear things he hadn't noticed in years. The sound of his own footsteps, the gentle clink of glass against ceramic, the wind knocking against the window. No one was clinging to him. No one needed saving. No one was watching to see if he'd hold it all together. And for the first time in his life, Josh began facing himself. Not as a role, not as a weight-bearer, not as anyone's hero. Just him. And the truth. It took Josh nearly a week to adjust to complete silence. No phone ringing, no work emails, no voicemails from his mom or Emily. In those first mornings in the forest-side town in Oregon, he woke to nothing but the sound of wind and the soft creak of the wooden floor beneath his feet. But this time, the silence didn't make him feel lost. It felt like a blank page, waiting to be written on. The house he rented was small, 1 bedroom, a living room that opened into a kitchen, and a balcony just big enough for a chair. The furniture was minimal, but clean, and more importantly, it held no memories. That's why he chose it. a place where no one had ever called him anything. Not boyfriend, not big brother, not the one holding everyone else together. Here, he was just a man with no past in the walls. After 3 weeks of sending out applications, Josh was hired by a small architecture firm, the kind that designed cozy homes and local coffee shops. No million-dollar projects, no chasing deadlines, just quiet team meetings with 8 people, simple sketches, and clients who cared more about wide porches to read on than making headlines. Josh didn't need to be exceptional here. Just on time, do the work, go home. But there was one thing he couldn't check off a list, couldn't design with precision, couldn't finish by end of day: healing. That he couldn't do alone. Amanda once said, "You should try therapy, not because you're weak, but because no one should have to carry pain alone forever." Back then, Josh had just stayed quiet, but now, with no more noise to drown things out, no job to bury himself in, no family to save, he knew she was right. He booked an appointment with a therapist named Dr. Lyle, a woman in her 50s, with a calm voice, sharp eyes, and the kind of presence that didn't rush anything. In the first session, Josh mostly just talked. Steady voice, no emotion. He spoke about Emily, about Tyler, about his mother. He said he was fine, but admitted he wasn't sure what that even meant anymore. Dr. Lyle didn't interrupt. She waited, then asked gently, "When you say you're fine, what are you trying to hide?" Josh didn't know how to answer. No one had ever asked him that before. Fine had always been the coat he threw on, so no one would ask him to unzip what was underneath. In the sessions that followed, therapy began peeling back the layers Josh had compressed for years. Pain, resentment, shame, rage. Not just toward Emily or Tyler, but toward himself. For letting it happen. For trusting too much, too long. For confusing endurance with love. One afternoon, Josh told Dr. Lyle that his mother had said he was too logical. Dr. Lyle tilted her head slightly and said with quiet clarity, "You don't have to forgive in order to move on." That sentence stopped Josh cold. He sat there in silence for a long time. And then the tears came. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. Falling onto his shirt like rain seeping through an old rooftop. He cried because finally someone had said the thing he'd been too afraid to admit, even to himself. That forgiveness isn't always required. That letting go doesn't have to mean letting others off the hook. That not forgiving doesn't make you a bad person. From that point on, Josh started learning how to live for himself. He woke up early and made breakfast, not for anyone else, not to impress, just to remind himself he deserved a proper meal. He started running, not to relieve stress, but to hear the sound of his own heartbeat, to feel what it meant to be alive in his own skin. At night, he read and he wrote, scribbling messy thoughts into a small notebook. One night, he wrote, "I'm not the older brother, not the boyfriend, not anyone's savior. I'm just someone learning how to exist with kindness." At work, Josh slowly warmed up to a few coworkers. Ryan, a young designer, started inviting him out for lunch. Mia, the accountant, had a habit of sending him memes at the end of the day. They didn't know anything about his past. To them, he was just Josh, the quiet older guy who draws really damn well. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. One quiet weekend afternoon, Josh was invited to a small company barbecue. He showed up with a homemade salad. No one asked about his past. They just talked about camping trips, their dogs, and who won the last office ping pong tournament. Josh laughed more than he expected to. When he got home, he felt tired, but light, not drained, not heavy. This new life wasn't glamorous. It wasn't some romantic version of healing, but it was calm. And that was enough for Josh to begin believing that someday, the memories wouldn't jolt him awake at 2 a.m. That what he was rebuilding, even if small, was still a kind of bravery. 3 years passed like mist. Quiet, delicate. And when he looked back, it all somehow still felt like it had just happened yesterday. Josh now lived in a small wooden house nestled among the northern Oregon hills, nearly a 20-minute drive from the center of town. His work was steady. Part-time design for a local architecture firm, plus the occasional freelance project when inspiration struck. He wasn't rich, but he had never felt more whole. Every morning, he made coffee, listened to jazz, and opened his windows to watch sunlight pour through the pines. No yelling. No apologetic texts, no calls asking for anything. It wasn't perfect peace, but it was real. One October evening, as Josh was cleaning up the kitchen, his phone buzzed. A call from an unfamiliar number. Out of state. He let it ring. A moment later, a single text arrived. "Josh, it's me. I don't know where to start. It's just, Tyler's gone. He won't take responsibility for the baby. I was wrong. I know. I just wanted to say, I'm so sorry." Josh sat down, still holding the dish towel. He read the message again, slowly, then placed the phone face down on the table. No anger, no trembling hands, just a light, hollow space in his chest, the kind you feel when you stumble across an old shirt in the back of a closet. Once it meant something. Once it hurt. Now, it was just fabric. Emily, once tied to every version of the future Josh had imagined, was now only a shadow with no power left to stir him. He didn't reply. He didn't block the number either. Silence is a language, and sometimes it's the clearest way to say, I don't belong to that story anymore. The next morning, Amanda came to visit. For the past 3 years, even living in different states, they had stayed in touch, through emails, occasional calls, and one visit a year, no matter what. Their friendship had no trace of romance. But it was deep, deep enough to trust each other fully, even in silence. Amanda brought wine, a new book, and the cake Josh liked. They sat on the balcony, listening to dry leaves rustle beneath their feet, talking about little things, her new coworkers, his newly repainted kitchen, the neighbor downstairs who owned a cat so fat they had to push it out the door every morning. When night fell, Josh told Amanda about Emily's message. Amanda wasn't surprised. She just asked, "Did it make you feel angry again?" Josh shook his head. "No, just distant." She nodded. "Then you've made it through." Josh didn't say anything more. They sipped their wine in silence. But inside him, something softened, like the final page of a long, painful chapter had just been folded shut. That night, after walking Amanda to her car, Josh returned to his room and opened his journal. He hadn't written in months, but this time the pen moved easily, as if it had never stopped. 3 years ago, I was someone betrayed, abandoned, pushed aside. I thought I had to forgive to find peace, but I was wrong. What I needed wasn't forgiveness. It was to walk away from the place that kept needing it. Maybe my brother still needs help, but I'm no longer the crutch people step on just to stand. Josh set the pen down and exhaled, a long, quiet breath. The kind that comes when you finally take off a shirt that's been too tight for far too many years. He stood up and pulled back the curtains. Outside, the full moon hovered just above the pine trees, glowing softly, as if it was about to say something. But Josh just looked at it and smiled. Not every story needs to end with an explanation. Some stories just need to go quiet and find their own place to settle. At the bottom of the page, he wrote one last question, not for closure, but for whoever might need to ask it someday. If your own family does the unforgivable, would you choose to hurt with them or live the rest of your life in peace? Some wounds don't need stitching, they just need stillness, and time will take care of the rest. Josh's story was never about revenge. It was about dignity, about choosing to stop before you completely shatter trying to hold on to people who've already let go. Not everyone who shares your blood deserves your sacrifice, and not every kind of love deserves forgiveness. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go. What would you do if you were in Josh's shoes? Would you choose to forgive and try to fix what's broken, or walk away to protect your peace? If this story made you stop and think, leave a comment. And if you want more love stories, raw, painful, unforgettable, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next.